In a loony turn of events, those wacky Canadians north of us have become richer than us. What is that all about? I'm Allen Barton. Stand by for Front Page. Joining me in studio, Yaron Brook, president of the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights, and Terry Jones, associate editor for Investors Business Daily. As of July 1st, new data show that the average Canadian household's net worth is higher than the average American households. Unemployment of our neighbors to the north is 7.2% and 8.2% here, and their homes hold more value. We're shocked. Terry, thoughts? What's going on here?
How can that be? It's just not possible.
That's not fair. We're supposed to be
we're the number one, not them.
Come on.
Well, you know, it is possible. And I saw an interesting headline. I can't remember who did it, but it was something to the effect of Canada's hard socialism creates miracle or something like that. Quite the contrary. What they did was they were following the sort of the third way path, the socialist path, and they reverted to common sense. And they cut their budget, they cut taxes. They now have the lowest corporate taxes in the OECD. They did a number of things to get their fiscal house in order. They only have 30% of GDP debt.
They don't have these gigantic housing authorities either. They don't
have Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
And all of a sudden their housing values are, hey.
They didn't have a housing crisis.
But what do you say? Because I think most people associate Canada, of course, the number one thing they'll say is healthcare. All the Canadians get their healthcare, and they have this fabulous system, and why can't the Americans copy that system? And look, you know this is coming.
Sure.
They have universal healthcare, and their standard of living is higher.
So if you put aside healthcare, the fact is that based on all the measures I've seen, Fraser Institute, Heritage Institute published these lists of economic freedom. Canada is ahead of the United States in economic freedom. The United States has dropped from number 3 to number 10 over the last decade under Bush and Obama. That we've dropped, and we're probably dropping to 15 at the rate we're going within a year or two. So Canada is more economically free. Yes, the healthcare isn't as free, and I'd still rather get healthcare in the United States than in Canada. But if you want to open up a business, it's easier to do in Canada. But there are two other reasons, I think. One is they're sitting on immense amount of resources, and they have marginalized their environmental lobby over there so that they're actually exploiting the earth and using those resources.
They also don't have any defense budget, if not any, but I mean...
That's minor. I mean, the second thing, which I think is important, right, is global warming. Canada has become habitable.
That's right. That's right. All the crops are moving north.
Well, it's that new Club Med Toronto they opened up. I think that's going gangbusters.
That's what it is. Terry, former Finance Minister Paul Martin, quote, resisted the siren call of deregulation, as he put it, and insisted that banks tighten their loan loss and reserve requirements. So it goes counter to what Yaron is saying or what you've been saying. They're sort of trying to say, like, it's our regulatory environment. It is, in fact, the hand of government that has been able to keep the banks from engaging in their worst habits and in the most licentious, irresponsible behavior, and that's why they're doing so well.
Yeah, that's not true. For one thing, the current regulatory regime is basically a global one. It's under the Basel III Accords. All banks around the world are boosting their capital reserves. But Canadian banks were just not as exposed as U.S. banks, and quite frankly, U.S. banks do a lot of cutting-edge stuff. But what's of more importance, you know, and Yaron was on this. They exploited their oil. They also signed 11 free trade agreements over the last few years, which has opened up their market tremendously to the outside world. They've done a number of things that have made their economy blossom. And when you compare it to ours, a great percentage of our wealth is tied up in our homes. And for a lot of people, that has just been obliterated. Up there, many people still have positive value for their mortgages.
Just to be clear, Canadian banks are far, far, far less regulated than American banks. They don't have 5 different regulators looking over their shoulder. People complain, oh, Glass-Steagall, eliminating Glass-Steagall, that's what caused... They never had Glass-Steagall. They have commercial, and their investment banks have always been united. They are far less regulated. The real difference is that the Bank of Canada behaved itself during the 2000s. They didn't flood the system with money and low interest rates. And second, they had no Freddie and Fannie. to subsidize home ownership. So when people bought a house in Canada, they actually bought a house. They didn't. It wasn't being subsidized by taxpayers.
And the thing I always want to say, like, people point to Canada, they point to Sweden, they point to, and you have these fairly low population countries. Canada's what, 30 million or something like that, somewhere in there, a tenth of the population of the United States, with vast ecological resources, great free trade. You've talked about clean economic policies, and then a fairly small population. So yeah, they can make the choice if they want to provide certain health care for their populace, and that can work for them in accordance with other policies that you guys have been describing that keep the thing in balance. But to try to apply that system to a 300 million person country with the environment we're in,
it doesn't work over there either. Look, I mean, let's not excuse this. If you're sick in Canada, tough luck. It's not good. It's not a good system. However, both Canada and Sweden have something in common. In the 90s, they were heading towards becoming Greece. They were very close to being Greek-like, and what they did was they cut government spending dramatically. They ultimately lowered taxes, Sweden as well, and they cut regulation. They did exactly what the U.S. needs to do and exactly what Europe needs to do to get out of this mess.
So basically they become more American than America has
Absolutely. America is no longer American.
And people who sing the praises of Canadian healthcare don't seem to realize that there's an ever-increasing flow of Canadians, healthcare refugees, who come to America for special services that they can't get under the Canadian system.
All right, guys, good conversation. For Yaron and Terry, I'm Allen Barton, and you've been watching Front Page.